Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves wandering somewhere cool and misty, where the air tastes like memory and old candle smoke. You're drifting slowly down a sloping path paved with moon-colored cobblestones, lined with ferns that glow just enough to see by. There's a scent, lavender and something slightly burnt, and off in the distance you hear soft humming like someone dusting stars with a very small broom. You're wearing a cloak that isn't yours, and your name, well, it's been misplaced. No one seems too concerned. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling cozy already, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't quite remember deciding to rent a cottage in the Underworld. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Something about escaping the stress of mortal ambrosia taxes, or maybe you just really needed a break from thunderbolts and family drama. Being a demigod has its perks, but vacation days are not among them. The cottage wasn't there, and then it was. You'd been ambling along a misty ridge that didn't officially exist on any map, passing under arching blackthorn branches and over a bridge made entirely of sighs. And then suddenly, bam! A cozy stone cottage, crooked chimney, slate tiles, one window glowing faintly like a thoughtful firefly. It has the energy of a place that might shuffle a few meters to the left if you stare at it too hard. When you knock on the door, it opens before your knuckles make contact. A waft of warm cardamom air greets you. Inside, it smells like warm bread and old books that remember being loved. Come in or don't, the door grumbles in a sleepy baritone. But don't linger in the threshold. That's where the echo moths nest. You step over the threshold, feeling a soft shimmer crawl up your spine. The wooden floor creaks once, politely, as if to acknowledge your presence. The cottage is bigger on the inside. Or maybe it just respects personal space. A small armchair swivels slightly to face you. The fireplace clears its throat. You'll get to know it better later. And there, perched upside down from a rafter, is your prospective landlord. A bat in a tiny waistcoat, reading a scroll titled, "How to Run a Dwelling Without Being Cursed." "Ah," says the bat, without looking up. "You must be the demigod with a mild sense of direction and strong opinions about soup." You don't recall mentioning soup in your application, but nod anyway. "Right this way, then," the bat says, fluttering down and landing on a tiny pedestal near a writing desk. "Let's get the paperwork out of the way. Don't mind the ink. It bites if it's startled." The lease is glowing faintly in a color that could be described as whispered lilac. The clauses seem reasonable. Respect the moon tides, no midnight trumpet solos, and always give 3 days notice before raising the dead. You sign your name, whatever it is, and the lease rolls itself into a spiral and vanishes with a pop and a faint smell of cinnamon toast. The bat squints at you. "Right, you'll be in the northwest nook. Watch out for the sentient mold in the teacup drawer. It thinks it's a philosopher." He flaps away, muttering something about needing to dust the fog. You explore. The cottage has 7 rooms, or maybe 5.5, depending on the lunar cycle. Windows open into impossible views. One reveals a field of starlit pumpkins. Another shows a slow-motion thunderstorm, endlessly rolling through a field of feathers. You find a bathroom tiled in soft moss that hums lullabies. The mirror complements your aura. There's a kitchen full of copper pans and gently glowing fruit. A pantry with an unnecessarily dramatic spiral staircase. The bedroom has a canopy bed woven from raven feathers and dreams you forgot on purpose. It's warm. It's weird. It's home. That night, or whatever passes for night here, you sit on the front porch, sipping a tea made from something called moonflower drizzle. It tastes like sleepy violets and unread bedtime stories. You glance at the sky. There's a moon up there, but it's winking. Literally. Every few seconds. Some say the moon grants wishes here, if you whisper them into a bowl of salt and don't expect anything back. A breeze rustles through the glowing ferns. Somewhere in the distance, a choir of frogs rehearses a lullaby in minor key. The porch swing creaks in rhythm with your breathing. Inside, the fireplace tells itself a joke and wheezes out a puff of sparks. You lean back, finally, and allow yourself to admit this might be the oddest and most peaceful decision you've ever made. Your eyes begin to close, but the cottage creaks once, as if to say, There's more yet to come. The next morning, though it feels more like gently post-midnight with opinions, you are awakened by a polite tapping at the window. It's not urgent, just persistent, like a reminder from a dream you meant to remember. You open the shutters and are greeted by a most unexpected sight, a bat in a tweed waistcoat, holding a tiny clipboard in one claw and a quill in the other. "Gregor," he says, introducing himself with an unnecessarily deep bow. Landlord, part-time librarian, and full-time nocturnal. His fur is precisely groomed. His ears twitch every time your floorboards sigh. You realize he's been upside down the entire time, wings tucked like a cloak. "I do hope the bed didn't nibble," he says, peering at you through one round monocle. "We had an incident with a rogue dream last week. Left glitter in the pillows." You assure him everything was quite comfortable, though the mattress did hum quietly when you turned over. "Splendid. You've passed the first trial." You pause? "Trial?" Gregor clicks his tongue. "Figure of speech. We have to keep things dramatic, you know. Adds to the ambiance." You're invited, or rather, firmly ushered into the kitchen, where the breakfast table has already laid itself. A bowl of steam curls lazily above a plate of something warm and nutty smelling, possibly porridge, possibly breakfast in disguise. "Today," Gregor announces, flipping a page on his clipboard, "you must meet the neighbors." You raise an eyebrow. "They're all dead, of course," he adds cheerfully, "but terribly social." Before you can ask what exactly that means, he flutters to the floor and hands you a small scroll titled Market Day Provisions. Absolutely non-essential essentials. "Here's your grocery list. Try to avoid the fermented moonbeats," they argue. And just like that, he vanishes in a flap of wings, leaving you alone in the cozy chaos of your new kitchen. You dress, or rather, your wardrobe offers you an outfit. A soft robe that smells like parchment, and a pair of boots that gently levitate 2 inches above the ground, just to keep your feet dreamy, they say. The Whaling Market is easy enough to find. You follow the crooked path behind the garden, past the pond where fish recite haiku, and through a thicket of sleepy yew trees that yawn as you pass. The cobblestones start humming, and then, there it is. The market unfolds like a paper pop-up book. Tents of shadow silk, stalls built from moonstone and driftwood, strings of stardust twinkling above. Skeleton vendors rattle cheerfully as they call out deals. Spirits drift lazily between stands, chatting over jars of marmalade that sparkle faintly with memories. A sign reads, "Welcome to the Whaling Market. Prices negotiable, laughter non-refundable." You're greeted by a tall, thin skeleton in a top hat. His name is Percival, and he runs the Dreamfruit Emporium. "Freshly plucked from the orchard of forgotten naps," he declares, holding up a plum-like thing pulsing gently in your hand. Tastes like that one afternoon you almost fell asleep in the sun but didn't. You buy 3. Next, you're drawn toward a small stall labeled Weather in Bottles. A young ghost with ivy growing through her collar smiles as you approach. "Would you like a drizzle, a thunder rumble, or a nostalgic fog?" You choose the fog. It sighs happily as it's corked. Further down the lane, a floating tray of eggs glides by, softly glowing blue, nestled in a nest of invisible feathers. "Sky chicken," the vendor mutters. "They only lay when no one's looking." You don't ask questions. You buy half a dozen. You take a break near the edge of the market, where a mist-thin musician plays a harp made of rain. You sit beside a mossy fountain shaped like a sleeping lion and watch as shoppers float by, some in cloaks of cloud, others with flickering candles in their chests. A small creature resembling a teapot on legs scuttles up beside you and offers a sample of nostalgia cookies. They taste faintly of childhood games and books you left half-finished. "Not bad for a first market run," says a voice behind you. It's Gregor, dangling upside down from a lantern post. "Did you remember the invisible onions?" You show him your bag. He nods, clearly impressed. On the walk home, your feet barely touch the ground. The groceries bob behind you in a polite little cloud, and the mist parts gently with every step. As you approach the cottage, you notice something has shifted. The chimney is slightly taller. A vine has curled around the doorframe, blooming with sleepy daisies that open only when no one looks directly at them. Inside, the fireplace grumbles a welcome, the floor hums your name, and your chair spins slightly to face you. Gregor flutters to his roost and scratches something onto his clipboard. "Well," he says, "you've survived the Whaling Market, acquired essential whimsy, and haven't been cursed even once. Very promising. You unload your market haul into jars that label themselves. One says rainy day thoughts. Another simply murmurs, shh. Later, you sit in your window nook, sipping a tea brewed from one of the dream fruits. It tastes like rain on old stone and something you didn't know you missed. Somewhere in the woods, a bell rings once, then twice, then stops. Some say that bell marks the moment a dream changes direction. No one knows which way. You yawn. The cottage exhales in response. You're awoken, not rudely, just peculiarly, by the sound of the fireplace giggling. It's a low, crackling sort of laugh, like dry leaves being shuffled by someone who knows a good joke and is trying not to ruin the punchline. You shuffle out of bed, your feet brushing against the warm floorboards that hum a sleepy good morning. A soft glow leaks in through the curtains, not quite daylight, more of a well-lit twilight sort of vibe. The underworld doesn't really do mornings. When you step into the living room, the fireplace huffs. Ah, it says in a gravelly voice, its flames shaping briefly into what might be a winking face. You're finally up. Thought you'd sleep through eternity, which, down here, isn't even metaphorical. You blink. Did you just talk? Did you just talk? The fireplace mimics, then chuckles. Of course I did. I'm a fully certified hearth of hospitality. Got my license laminated and everything. The flames shift a little, later shaping briefly into a wobbly thumbs up. Now then, it continues, we need to talk about fuel. You glance at the woodpile. No, the fireplace says, scandalized. Wood is for amateurs. I feed on riddles, puns if I'm desperate, sarcastic limericks in a pinch. You consider this. I'm not very good at riddles. The hearth's flames crackle expectantly. Fine, you say, clearing your throat. What has roots that nobody sees is taller than trees? The fireplace interrupts. Tolkien. Classic. Acceptable. It belches a small puff of violet smoke. And while we're on the topic, it adds, don't let the kettle talk you into playing charades again. She cheats. You wander into the kitchen to confirm this, only to find the kettle sitting smugly atop the stove, steaming rhythmically in what could very well be Morse code. You squint. It whistles. Gregor flaps into the room, balancing a stack of mail on his back and one small biscuit on his nose. Ah, he says, I see you've met Embernard. Who? The fireplace, Gregor explains, had a name change after its midlife relightening. Used to be called Kevin. Embernard burps gently in affirmation. Gregor deposits the mail on the table. 3 letters, 2 notifications from the Bureau of Mildly Magical Misunderstandings and a coupon for eternal soup, though the fine print is a bit threatening. You sort through the letters. One is addressed to you by your full title, to the slightly confused Demigod in Cottage 3.5. Inside is a folded piece of parchment that simply reads, knock twice before borrowing tea from the cupboard. He bites when startled. The second letter is empty, but it smells faintly of old honey and stars. Gregor shrugs. Some mail is emotional. Best not to overthink it. Later that afternoon, while rearranging your pantry alphabetically by how things hum when no one is listening, you discover a small door behind the tea tins. You didn't notice it before. The doorknob sighs softly when you touch it. You knock once, then twice, nothing. Then, very gently, the door creaks open. You find a cupboard. Not just any cupboard, a walk-in, whispering, sometimes rumbling pantry of improbable dimensions. It contains a small table with 3 chairs, one for you, one for a shadow, and one that appears to be reserved for a fruit bowl with strong opinions. On a shelf high above, a teacup growls sleepily. Its saucer shuffles out of reach. Don't mind him, says a voice behind you. He's just grumpy because no one brewed him. It's Gregor, sipping from a thimble-sized espresso cup. You sit hesitantly. So, he says, what do you think of Embernard? You glance back toward the main room. He's opinionated. Indeed. Bit of a riddle snob, but reliable. Gregor flaps onto the table and pulls out a tiny notebook. You should know, he says, almost absently, that the Underworld occasionally tests its new tenants. Tests? Oh yes, he says. Nothing dangerous, just mildly inconvenient. Some places send crows. We send jokes. You glance down. The fruit bowl burps. The rest of the evening is spent in idle conversation with the fireplace. Embernard has surprisingly deep thoughts about the ethics of self-lighting candles, and you find yourself laughing more than expected. Before bed, you throw one last joke into the flames. What's orange and sounds like a parrot? Embernard pauses. A carrot. The flames puff in delight. That'll do nicely, he murmurs, curling into a soft blue glow. You crawl beneath your blanket. It's warm and heavy in the way good dreams are. Somewhere outside, a soft bell tolls once and then again and then again. Some say that if you hear the third bell, something you forgot remembers you. You fall asleep wondering what that might be. You're beginning to suspect that the underworld has a schedule. Not a rigid one, more like a loosely whispered suggestion passed around by curtains, moonbeams, and overly dramatic gusts of wind. This morning, you're guided out of bed by the smell of something baking. You don't remember turning on the oven. But then again, your slippers did escort you to the kitchen while humming a lullaby, so perhaps this is just how mornings work now. On the table sits a scone, perfectly triangular, glistening with soft sugar. The note beside it reads, "For when you feel like you're becoming real, G." You eat it slowly. It tastes like realization and lavender. Gregor floats in midair beside you. Well, technically he's hanging upside down from the chandelier, which has decided to swing slowly in time with an invisible waltz. "Today," he declares, "you're going to the Bureau." You blink. "Of mildly magical misunderstandings," he adds. "They've logged your arrival anomaly as a Class 2 whimsy breach." You finish your scone, licking the crumbs from your fingers. "What does that mean?" He hands you a scroll. "It means you might have bent one of the dream lattice rules on your way in. Nothing serious. Happens all the time. One fellow floated in on a sigh and left behind 6 accidental sunrises. Took us a week to dim them. The Bureau is apparently located just past the second moon pool and slightly before the upside-down orchard. You follow a flickering path that appears only when you look away from it. It curls lazily through misty glades and mossy arches until you arrive at a crooked stone building with an air of long-suffering patience. Above the arched door, carved in impeccable calligraphy, Bureau of Mildly Magical Misunderstandings. Please knock. Quietly. You do. The door opens with a yawning creak and exhales the scent of old parchment and slightly embarrassed enchantments. Inside, the lighting is dim and warm. Shelves spiral upward into impossible heights. Papers float through the air with a sense of purpose, occasionally bumping into one another and muttering polite apologies. A sleepy receptionist, a centaur in a cardigan, waves you in. Name? You hesitate. "I'm not sure I remember." He nods sympathetically. Scribbles. Slightly confused Demigod into a glowing ledger and gestures toward a waiting chair that politely scoots itself forward. The chair is surprisingly comfortable. It purrs gently when you sit. Soon, you're called into a side room where a rather disorganized-looking dryad is sorting through folders that occasionally try to eat each other. She peers at you through spectacles made of glass frog wings. "Ah, yes," she says. "Whimsy breach, Class 2. She flips open a folder and shows you a diagram shaped like a sideways hourglass, filled with tiny bells. "This," she explains, "is what your dream trail looked like upon entry." You nod as if that makes sense. She taps the bell in the center. It rings once, then again, then hums. "That third chime," she says. "Not typical." You shift in your chair. "It usually means someone, somewhere, wished you into existence," she continues. You blink. "I thought I wandered in by accident." The dryad smiles gently. "No one wanders here by accident. You're either sent, wished, or forgotten upward." You try to process that, but your thoughts float off like balloons untied. "Do I need to do anything?" She waves her hand. "Just be. The Bureau rarely intervenes directly. We're more about observing the fallout of gently whimsical chaos." As you leave, she hands you a small sealed envelope. "For later," she says. "When the moon turns pink and someone calls your name in a language you don't speak." You tuck it into your pocket. Outside, the path home is somehow both shorter and longer than before. The orchard is upside down, as promised. Trees dangle from the sky, their roots trailing softly in the air. You pluck a fruit without reaching. It tastes like a question you never asked. Back at the cottage, Embernard greets you with a yawn and a belch of smoke. Gregor is organizing a stack of papers that flutter every time he touches them. "How'd it go?" he asks. You hand him the envelope. He squints at it, then nods. "Ah, excellent. Delayed destiny. Always exciting." You're not sure what that means, but you're too tired to ask. You curl up in the chair beside the hearth. The fire crackles something soothing. You think you hear your name spoken softly from within the flames, but it might have just been the wood remembering something about you. Outside, the third bell rings again. Once, twice, then silence. Some say the third time it doesn't ring is more important. You fall asleep without deciding which one this was. You wake to find a spoon floating beside your bed. It's gently humming, something tuneless but comforting, like the kind of lullaby that forgets its own ending. When it notices you're awake, it bobs cheerfully, then zips out the door in a hurry. Curious, you follow. The spoon leads you down the hallway, through the pantry, where the fruit bowl now wears a small paper crown, and out the back door, which swings open with a sigh like an old friend stretching. Outside is different. There's a garden where there wasn't one before. It wasn't there yesterday, you're quite sure. Now it sprawls like a whimsical patchwork quilt, glowing mushrooms, vines shaped like spiral staircases, and one enormous pumpkin that snores lightly in its sleep. Gregor flaps down beside you, carrying 2 teacups and a scroll shaped like a duck. Ah, he says, handing you 1 cup. The garden's arrived, took its time, always does. You sip. The tea tastes like yesterday's dream warmed over with a dash of honeyed déjà vu. Gregor unfurls the scroll. The garden operates on what we call whimsy weather. It grows what it feels like growing, mostly metaphors, sometimes vegetables. You blink at a row of cabbages arranged in alphabetical order. A sign nearby reads, "Cabbages, emotionally stable." The spoon, you ask. Gregor points to a small mound of dirt where the spoon is now spinning slowly, burying itself like a sleepy mole. That's how the garden plants things. Wishes mostly. Spooned wishes go deeper, more poetic. He gestures at a gnarled tree whose bark is covered in runes and faint giggles. That one sprouted from a pun about moonlight and marmalade. You stroll through the rows. One plot is filled with half-bloomed riddles. They sway when you walk past, whispering answers to questions you haven't thought of yet. In the center of the garden sits a bench made of woven shadows and candle stubs. A sign reads, "Sit here when you miss something, even if you're not sure what." You sit. It's warm, which is strange. Shadows shouldn't be warm. But this place doesn't obey shoulds. A breeze floats by, carrying the scent of old letters and vanilla. Somewhere behind you, a soft chime rings. "Gregor," you ask, "do gardens usually appear overnight?" He shrugs, sipping from his thimble-sized cup, only when you need them. He flutters up to examine a lemon tree that drops tiny hourglasses instead of fruit. "I've been thinking," he says. "You should meet the neighbors." "Neighbors?" you echo. He nods. "The cottage community. There's a whole collection of retired mythicals and semi-legendary oddities in the valley. Lovely folks, mostly harmless, except for Mrs. Nettle. She's a bog witch with strong opinions about tea temperatures." He rolls out a map. It's hand-drawn, animated, and slightly self-aware. It shuffles a few landmarks around when you squint at them too hard. Your cottage, labeled "You Are Confused Here," sits nestled between possibly a volcano and definitely not a trapdoor. The nearest neighbor is Sir Puddlewick, gentleman salamander, retired. Gregor points. He's a good starting point, only mildly flammable. Later that afternoon, you set off. The garden waves as you leave. Literally. One of the cabbages lifts a leafy hand and salutes. The path to Puddlewick's is winding and cobbled with memory stones. Each one emits a faint echo of a forgotten giggle or a misplaced sigh. One stone recites an entire limerick about a narwhal who opened a bakery. You arrive at a small burrow-like dwelling nestled in a mossy knoll. The door is round, painted a cheerful teal, and slightly ajar. A faint jazz melody wafts out. You knock. The door swings open on its own, revealing a warmly lit study and a small, dapper salamander wearing a waistcoat and monocle. "Ah," he says, "you must be the Demigod. Come in, come in. Mind the rug. It's brooding today." You step over a muttering carpet and accept a cup of something that might be hot chocolate or melted lullaby. It steams in soft spirals. Puddlewick gestures to a wall covered in framed spoons. "Collected these over centuries," he says proudly. "Each from a different world. Some sing, some duel. One once wrote a sonnet that made a dragon cry." You nod, sipping. "Do all spoons move on their own?" He laughs. "Not all, just the helpful ones." As the evening deepens, Puddlewick shares stories, tales of retired dragons who run antique shops, old curses that forgot how to activate, and a lonely comet that writes poetry to passing moons. Eventually, the conversation drifts, literally. The room starts to float ever so slightly, as if memory and time decided to loosen their grip. Some say, Puddlewick murmurs, that the underworld isn't underground at all. It's just the place where forgotten things remember you. He leans back in his chair, which yawns contentedly. You'll find your place here eventually, he adds. It may not be where you thought you were going, but it's where you've arrived. You thank him and step back into the twilight, where the sky has turned the soft color of wet chalk and lullabies. Back at the cottage, Embernard is snoring. Gregor is asleep in a hanging teacup, and in the pantry, the fruit bowl has painted eyes on the pears. You fall into bed, head spinning gently with regardles and softly muttering rugs. You think you hear the third bell again, but only half of it. Some say that's when something almost remembers. You wake up to find your bed floating 2 inches above the floor. It's not dramatic, just a gentle, slightly buoyant drift, like a dream that doesn't want to end. When you swing your legs over the side, the bed slowly settles back to the ground with a dignified sigh. Outside, something smells faintly of cinnamon and mystery. Gregor is already awake, juggling 3 muffins and 1 disapproving scroll. Morning, he says. You're levitating now. That usually means your subconscious is adjusting to the local gravity of unreality. Perfectly normal. You're halfway through your first muffin when a soft knock echoes from the door. Not on the door, but from within it. You open it carefully. A large, elderly tortoise wearing an apron and a sun hat stands on your doorstep, holding a basket full of cloudberries and handwritten notes. Morning, dearest, she says in a voice like warm quilts. I'm Madame Fennell. I'm the local postmistress / librarian / forgotten river goddess. I've brought you your welcome parcel. She hands you the basket. It contains a tiny folded map that only appears when you hum, a book titled A Beginner's Guide to Retired Divinity, a plush fish that blinks when you're not looking, a jar of dream salt labeled for emergencies only, and a folded letter with your name written in a handwriting that feels oddly familiar. You don't open the letter yet. Madame Fennell shuffles in uninvited, inspects your fireplace, good bones this hearth, and leaves behind a tin of biscuits that purr when opened. Before she leaves, she turns with a twinkle in her eye. Tonight, she says, if you hear music coming from under the floorboards, don't be alarmed. It's just the midnight market setting up. Only appears on Thursdays that feel like Sundays. Then she vanishes. You stand in the silence for a while. Except the silence isn't entirely silent. It crackles with the faint sound of cellophane laughter and distant music warming up. Later that evening, the floorboard beneath the kitchen creaks once, then twice, then very deliberately lifts like a trapdoor, offering you a suggestion rather than a command. A warm light spills out. Gregor perks up. Ah, splendid. The market's open. He grabs a small pouch of what he calls forget-me coins and gestures for you to follow. Best to leave your name behind, he advises. Just for the night. Things at the midnight market can get a little negotiable. You nod, slip your folded name into a jar labeled Hold for Later, and descend the staircase of glowing steps. The midnight market is vast and strange. It stretches in all directions like a tapestry that unraveled itself just to be admired. The air is rich with incense, sweet breads, and the sound of polite haggling between creatures whose species you can't quite identify. One stall sells shoes that remember your dreams. Another offers bottles of historical weather, including a fog from the siege of somewhere and a breeze last felt by a lonely phoenix. Gregor flutters over to a stand run by a talking eel named Percival. They discuss taxes in fish language while you wander. You pause at a stall draped in velvet and moonlight. A tall, robed vendor gestures toward an assortment of keys. Each opens a door that may or may not exist, they say. Guaranteed uncertainty, or your mystery back. You pick one shaped like a question mark and slip it into your pocket. A shadowy figure nearby offers you a thimble of soup. You sip it out of curiosity. It tastes like lullabies sung under the stars by someone who misses you terribly. Somewhere nearby, a group of retired muses argue gently over a chessboard made of petrified metaphors. Gregor rejoins you, holding a glowing compass that spins only when you ask it a personal question. Did you buy anything? He asks. You show him the key. He tilts his head. Ah, one of those. That'll come in handy. On your way out, a stallkeeper beckons to you. She has eyes like still water and hands that smell faintly of ink. I've been saving this for someone like you, she says. She offers you a music box carved from bone and shell. Inside, instead of gears, there's a tiny hourglass that turns itself whenever someone nearby sighs. It plays a song you're sure you've forgotten. Back home, the floorboards settle politely behind you. You place the music box on the windowsill. It ticks softly, like a heartbeat remembering something. Gregor yawns and flutters off toward his teacup nest. You curl up by the hearth. Outside, a storm of gentle starlight begins to fall, flakes of shimmer that melt on contact and leave behind warm thoughts. Somewhere in the cottage, a door unlocks with a sound like a question being asked kindly. You don't open it yet, but you will. Some say the midnight market leaves traces, a smell, a dream, a missing spoon. You fall asleep listening to the faintest echo of its music. And something, beneath the bed, beneath the dream, beneath the day, sings quietly just for you. You wake up to the smell of toast that remembers its own recipe. In the kitchen, Embernard is wearing a tiny apron and appears to be arguing with the teapot. The toast is floating lazily in midair, spinning just enough to brown evenly on both sides. Gregor is draped across a ladle, reading a very old newspaper called the Yesterday Gazette. Morning, he mumbles without looking up. You're glowing faintly. That's probably from the market. It tends to leave a shimmer. Don't worry, it wears off after a century or two. You glance in the mirror. He's right. Your reflection is slightly translucent around the edges, like a page that's only half turned. On the table sits the music box from last night. You swear it's humming softly to itself, and beside it, the folded letter from Madame Fennel's basket, the one you still haven't opened. You sit, take a deep breath, and unfold it. The handwriting shifts as you read, as if rewriting itself to suit your thoughts. Dear you, we've been expecting you longer than you've known you were coming. The cottage chose you. That sort of thing happens sometimes, especially when the old myths go a bit feral. Please be gentle with the walls. They remember too much. And if you find the spoon again, let it rest. It's been through a lot. Yours in oddity. The Committee of Formerly Revered Entities, Wing. You set the letter down. Gregor peers over his paper. Oh, the South Wing sent you one? They must be fond of you. You raise an eyebrow. Oh, don't worry, he says. They mostly just send letters to people they almost remember. It's a compliment. After breakfast, the doorbell rings. You didn't know you had a doorbell. It sounds like a bellhop apologizing for being early. Standing at the door is a tall, gangly man made almost entirely of folded parchment and unfinished poetry. He tips an invisible hat. Greetings. Delivery for the slightly confused Demigod. You nod cautiously. That's probably me. He hands you a parcel tied in twine and moth wings, then vanishes with a whisper of half-remembered stanzas. Inside the parcel is a cloak made of dusk and a note. Wear this when you visit the Mirror Lake. It helps with the contradictions. Gregor, now perched on the curtain rod, mutters, Well, that settles it. Time to visit the lake. You pack a small satchel, one sandwich, one glowing spoon. It came back somehow. One pebble from the midnight market and the new cloak. The journey to the lake isn't far, but the path insists on twisting whenever you're not looking. A signpost shrugs as you pass. Eventually, you reach a clearing that feels quieter than it should. The lake lies ahead, smooth as glass, dark as velvet. At its center is an island that appears only when you look at it sideways. The Mirror Lake reflects not the sky above, but dreams below. When you step near the edge, your reflection blinks first. Gregor hums. This place is complicated. You kneel, and your reflection leans forward too, but instead of copying you, it raises its hand and writes something backwards in the air. You squint. It says, Remember the Thunderberry? You do. Or maybe you don't. Maybe it's something you're supposed to remember later. The lake ripples gently. A boat approaches, on its own, silent and carved from a single moonbeam. You and Gregor climb in. The boat rows itself to the island, where time feels both older and less relevant. There's a gazebo at the center. Inside sits a figure in a rocking chair made of braided fog. She's neither young nor old, neither asleep nor awake. Her presence is a riddle without a punchline. She gestures for you to sit. I'm the curator, she says, of forgotten potentials. She reaches into her coat and pulls out something unexpected, a version of you, carved in wood and full of gentle regret. This, she says, is who you almost were. If you had gone left instead of right, if you'd said yes to the wrong question, if you had never answered the spoon. The wooden figure shudders faintly in her hand. You stare at it. Then she tucks it away. But you didn't become that version. You became this one. This slightly confused, cottage-renting, mildly glowing mythlet who stumbles politely through impossible gardens. Gregor offers her a thimble of tea. She accepts. Some say the lake stores all the versions of us we've set down like coats we didn't want to wear anymore. You ask her if they ever come back. She smiles, sad and sideways. Only when we're not looking. But that's their way of saying goodbye. As the sun, or something pretending to be sun, lowers behind the hills, the curator gives you one parting gift, a mirror the size of a coin. When you're unsure, she says, ask the version of yourself who dreams bravest. Back in the boat, Gregor dozes off. You watch your reflection in the lake until it starts to blur. By the time you return to the shore, the island is gone again. Back at the cottage, the spoon is humming. The music box clicks once, then settles. And in the pantry, the pairs are writing a play. You go to bed with the mirror coin under your pillow. Tonight, the dreams wait their turn. The next morning arrives quietly, like a guest who lets themselves in and tidies the hallway before you're even out of bed. You wake to the scent of something herbal and slightly mischievous. Possibly thyme, possibly treason. Downstairs, Embernard is wearing a velvet beret and stirring a pot of something that glows gently and smells like misplaced nostalgia. Gregor's reading again, this time from a guide titled The Impractical Almanac of Underworld Weather and Social Events. It's fog day, he says, not looking up. The sky will probably lie about everything until dinner. You stretch, shuffle toward the teacup, and notice the cottage feels slightly larger. The hallway you pass has one more door than it did yesterday. That's the thing about renting property in the underworld, Gregor says casually. It tends to unfold. He flutters down to your shoulder, nibbling a crumb from your collar. Today's a good day for wandering. So you wander. You take the key you bought from the midnight market, shaped like a question mark, warm in your palm, and try it on one of the new doors. It clicks. Inside, a sunlit greenhouse full of plants that hum lullabies to each other. Their leaves shimmer with condensation and polite secrets. A vine hands you a hat. You move on. The next room is a ballroom with no ceiling. The sky above is a slowly turning map of other people's dreams. A violin plays itself in the corner, just out of tune enough to sound wistful. You try a third door, and step into what can only be described as a wistfulness conservatory. Chairs upholstered in old friendships, a fireplace that crackles in the rhythm of forgotten jokes, a grandfather clock ticking in the same tempo as your heartbeat. A sleepy raven offers you a mug of almost cocoa, which tastes like comfort with a hint of maybe. You take a seat and let the quiet press gently around you. Then, footsteps. Someone's coming down the corridor. The sound is delicate, like a child walking on glass rain. You peek out the door and see yourself. Well, not exactly. The figure is wearing the dust cloak you brought to the Mirror Lake, but their eyes shine like someone who made a different decision at some long-forgotten fork. They pass without seeing you, slip into the ballroom, and vanish. You stare after them. Gregor appears beside you with a sigh. Mirror echoes, he says. They slip through sometimes. Mostly harmless. Just don't follow them into spiral staircases. You promise not to. You return to the kitchen, still holding the cup. It's still warm. Embernard is balancing a ladle on his nose and demanding applause. Gregor obliges with tiny wing claps. Later that day, Madame Fennel returns. She's riding a cloud of old newspaper clippings and surrounded by moths carrying minute scrolls. Council meeting, she declares, placing a scone on your head like a crown. Tonight, you've been requested. You blink. Don't worry, she says. It's more of a tea party than anything else. You'll mostly nod and be vaguely remembered. You prepare accordingly, wearing the cloak, tucking the mirror coin into your pocket, and bringing the music box in case someone needs soothing. The council meets beneath the great hollow tree, the one that hums lullabies during storms and drops pine cones full of riddles. You recognize a few faces. Madame Fennel, of course. The eel merchant, Percival. A cloud-shaped gentleman who smells like distant thunder. And then, at the head of the long crescent table, a chair carved from moonbones and moss, empty until it isn't. A woman sits there now. Her face is blank parchment, her hands always writing themselves. The scribe, whispers Gregor. She turns to you, eyes ink black and slow blinking. You've caused Interesting distortions, she says without moving her mouth. The walls have started to listen again. You nod. It seems the polite thing to do. Madame Fennel offers you a scone and a folded paper bird. They'd like you to consider becoming the cottage's permanent keeper, only if it suits you, of course. You choke slightly on your tea. Gregor looks thrilled. You'd get access to the second attic, Madame Fennel says, and the ghost sewing room. No pressure. The meeting continues with casual discussions of moss etiquette and what to do about the yawning corridor that opened near the soup cellar. Eventually, you're asked to speak. You rise, thank them for their kindness, and admit, quite honestly, that you're not entirely sure how you got here. The council nods in unison. That's exactly the point, says the scribe. The underworld has enough people who know where they're going. We rather like the ones who stumble gracefully. As you leave, the moon has tilted sideways. The stars seem closer. You walk home through mist that smells like lullabies and burnt cinnamon. At your door, a note hangs from the knob. You did fine. The spoons voted yes. Inside, the cottage purrs softly. You curl up in your chair, holding the music box, and wonder if the other version of you, cloak-clad and quiet, has also found a home somewhere. Some say the underworld chooses its residents like a book chooses its reader. And when the right one arrives, everything shifts, just a little, just enough. You fall asleep to the sound of the clock ticking like a drowsy dragon. Outside, the wind hums your name backwards. The next morning, you wake up to the sound of your name, only it's being sung by the curtains. They sway gently in a breeze that doesn't exist, harmonizing in a key known only to furniture with fond memories. Gregor is already awake, perched atop your pillow, sipping from a dewdrop teacup. Big day, he chirps. Time to visit the library. You blink, still half dreaming. We have a library? Not ours, he says. The library. You sit up. Underworld Public Archive of Mythic Misunderstandings and Slightly Inaccurate Prophecies, he explains. Most just call it the lib. You dress, though the clothes in your wardrobe have opinions. The cloak from the Mirror Lake insists on coming along, flutters to your shoulders, and settles like a sleepy crow. You take the coin mirror, the glowing spoon, and a thimble of patience. The cottage door opens to a different path this time. Instead of the usual gravel and snoring mushrooms, the road is paved with quotations. Entire phrases are etched into the stones beneath your feet. Some heroes are made, others rent cottages. Prophecy begins at the teacup's edge. If lost, please hum politely. As you walk, trees lean in to listen. Birds repeat gossip they heard from dreams. One tree offers you a fig made entirely of folded memories. Finally, you reach the lib. It's enormous. Colossal, a cathedral of stacked parchment and golden ladders. Books float, shelves drift lazily through the air like well-fed jellyfish. The building hums with quiet revelation. A large bronze sign reads, "Welcome, Seeker. Mind the whispers." At the front desk is a sentient fountain pen named Margot, who dips herself politely before handing you a card. Temporary browsing rights, 1 confused demigod, 1 sarcastic bat, 3 unexplored fates. You thank her. Gregor, ever excited by paper, immediately vanishes down a hallway labeled Unfiled Theories and Theoretical File Systems. You're left alone beneath a chandelier made of dictionary fragments. A librarian approaches, tall, elegant, and dressed in robes of footnotes. "May I help you find something?" they ask, in a voice like pages turning. You pause, then say, "I'm not sure what I'm looking for." They nod. "Perfect. Right this way." You're led through a series of shifting halls. Some are narrow and filled with sneezy dust. Others are vast and echo with ancient bookmarks. Eventually, you stop at a single shelf. It holds only 1 book. The cover is blank. The spine is cracked. It smells like jasmine, rust, and possibilities. The librarian gestures. "This volume only appears for people who've recently had tea with someone from the South Wing." You open the book. Inside are stories, dozens, all about you, but not the you standing here. These are other versions. One is a blacksmith for celestial spiders. Another dances professionally for volcanoes. One opened a school for lost echoes. But one entry stands out, the slightly confused demigod who stayed. This version of you doesn't leave, doesn't try to fix anything, just is, dwelling in myth, sipping tea, listening kindly, growing strange and lovely in a world that gently bends to them. You close the book slowly. "Do people ever rewrite their stories?" you ask. The librarian smiles. "Every night, and sometimes even while they nap." You return to the main atrium, where Gregor is tangled in a stack of sentient index cards. They were having a meeting, he explains. I might have voted by accident. Back at the front desk, Margot stamps your card with a flourish. The ink reads, borrowed, one understanding of who you might become. You step outside. The sky is now a sleepy orange, like marmalade after a long bath. Clouds drift in the shape of punctuation. As you walk home, something follows you, not in a frightening way, but like a song that hums itself back into your memory. It's the you who stayed. You don't see them exactly, but you feel their quiet approval, walking half a step behind. When you reach the cottage, the lights blink twice, as if winking. Inside, Bernard has baked a pie with an argument baked into the crust. You and Gregor eat it anyway. It tastes like contradictions and cardamom. Before bed, you place the mirror coin on the windowsill. It reflects not your face, but the library aisle where you first held the book. Some say the lib never truly lets go of the readers it chooses, and that the more you wander its halls, the more your story begins to notice you. As you slip beneath the quilt, which is humming a lullaby in ancient Greek, the cottage breathes around you. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll visit the Whispering Cellar, or the post office that only sends mail backward. But tonight, you sleep with books still turning behind your eyelids. You wake slowly, not entirely sure which direction time is flowing. The light in your room is syrupy and blue, like moonlight that overslept. Your pillow is extra soft this morning, as if it's been studying clouds in its spare time. Someone, possibly you, has placed a single plum on your bedside table, wearing a tiny paper crown. Gregor is dozing upside down on the lampshade. Bernard is nowhere to be seen, but a trail of cinnamon sparkles leads toward the pantry. A note has been tucked beneath your doorknob, written in looping, overconfident handwriting. Tea with timekeeper. Noonish. Wear something ambiguous. Fennel. You dress accordingly, layering an outfit that makes no firm statements about season, era, or species. The cloak throws in a few shimmering opinions of its own. Outside, the path has changed again. This time, it's made entirely of old receipts and half-finished journal entries. They crinkle politely beneath your feet as you walk. You reach a small clearing you've never seen before. In the center, a grandfather clock with no hands. Beneath it sits a tea house shaped like a teacup. It steams gently and smells of bergamot and wistfulness. Inside waits the timekeeper. She is old, or maybe brand new. Her hair is made of dry clock grass and twirls slightly as she moves. Her eyes are each set to a different century. Welcome, she says, pouring tea that loops backward up the spout. Have a seat, or hover, or both. You sit, or possibly hover. Timekeeper gestures to the walls, which display slow-moving images of past and future moments, playing in a gentle loop. In one, you're petting a beast made entirely of forgotten lullabies. In another, you're dancing with Bernard beneath a rain of starlit moss. I asked you here, she says, because the cottage has begun to keep its own time again. That hasn't happened in quite a while. You sip your tea. It tastes like clock hands melting in honey. You've created little ripples, she continues. Moments that loop, memories that ask questions. It's delightful. Gregor, who has snuck onto the table and is nesting in a biscuit tin, mumbles, "We're very proud." Timekeeper opens a drawer from beneath her robes. Inside is a small box ticking. "Take this," she says. Inside the box is a pocket watch, only it doesn't tell time. Instead, each number is replaced with a feeling. Hopeful, nearly brave, tea craving, softly bewildered. Hold it when you feel unmoored, she says. It won't fix the moment, but it might help you sit with it. You thank her, and as you do, the tea house tilts slightly, and you realize it's floating just a few inches off the ground. That's normal, she says. We unstick from minutes around midday. Before leaving, she gives you a parting gift, a scone with a prophecy tucked inside. You eat the scone, delightful, and unfold the parchment. It reads, "A visitor will arrive with no shadow. Do not offer them soup." You pocket it, just in case. On your way home, the sky is behaving unusually. It blinks, just once. You blink back to be polite. The cottage has rearranged slightly. The kitchen is now to the left of the stairs, and the fireplace plays a slow waltz in C minor. The books on the shelf appear to be gossiping. One winks. You find Bernard in the pantry, organizing jars of spite, whimsy, and cabbage. "Made you a salad," he says. "Don't ask what's in it." You eat it anyway. It tastes like leaf, memory, and exactly one forbidden pun. After lunch, you spend time in the sitting room, where the armchair now sighs contentedly whenever you move. A small, doily-clad side table keeps trying to show you family photos from its drawer. One shows Madame Fennel as a young hedgehog, posing next to a banshee choir. Another shows the cottage, but from the outside. Only the outside in the photo has more windows, and a weather vane shaped like a sleeping lion. And a tiny figure on the porch that looks remarkably like you, only wearing spectacles and humming to a bouquet. Gregor leans in. Future? He guesses. Alternate timeline? Paper forgery? You shrug. Yes? That evening, there's a knock at the door. You open it to find a visitor. They have no shadow, and they are holding soup. You freeze. Gregor hisses. No soup! The prophecy! The visitor blinks slowly. Ah, they say. Right, wrong address. They turn and walk away, vanishing into a thin slice of moonlight that was definitely not there a moment ago. You close the door. The pocket watch hums faintly in your hand. Some say time in the underworld is more suggestion than rule. It flows like a sleepy stream, taking detours, forgetting appointments, pausing for dramatic effect. And those who live here long enough start to slip into their own rhythm, gentler, dreamier, full of tea and nearly remembered days. As you climb the stairs to bed, the house shifts again. Not drastically, just enough for your footsteps to echo differently. And from your window, you see the sky slowly stitching itself back together. Morning arrives wearing a cloak of mist and the scent of overripe nectarines. You rise, half floating between waking and dreaming, your limbs reluctant to obey gravity. Gregor is sprawled across your sock drawer like he lost a debate with a feather duster. The window is fogged, but someone or something has drawn an elaborate doodle on the glass. A cottage with little wings, sailing across a sleepy ocean made of quilt patches. Beneath it, written in reversed script. Today, you meet the neighbors. A little nervous, you dress slowly. Your shirt offers unsolicited commentary on your color choices, but you win the argument by bribing it with lavender buttons. Embernard appears, levitating an omelet that smells suspiciously like mushrooms and nostalgia. He's wearing a hat made entirely of stitched-together epilogues. Big day, he says, setting the omelet down with a flourish. You've been invited to the orchard of eternal neighbors. Gregor squeaks. Is that the one where everyone thinks they're the main character? Worse, Embernard mutters. They monologue. Still, you eat the omelet. It tastes like good decisions you haven't made yet. The orchard is precisely 3 tilts west of your cottage, just past the brook that whispers old recipes to passing birds. You find the entrance beneath an arch of grapevines that blush when you look at them. Inside, trees bear fruits in impossible shapes. A pear shaped like an hourglass, an apple that giggles when picked, a plum that insists on being called Kevin. You are greeted by the first neighbor, Madame Tithonia, a woman with hair like flowering vines and the posture of someone who once wrestled time and won a trophy for most graceful defiance. She speaks in song lyrics and herbal metaphors. Welcome, drifting root, she says, placing a crown of clover on your head. Come sip dew from the petal of knowing. You do. It tastes like the color green and half a bedtime story. One by one, the neighbors arrive. There's Sir Bramblefork, a retired centaur poet who now translates bad omens into cozy limericks. The twins, Kindly and Other Kindly, shapeshifters who bake moods into cookies. You try one labeled Quiet Triumphant Regret. It makes your chest hum. Una the wisp spinner, who crafts blankets from old dreams and covers lost thoughts with them until they stop weeping. Each introduces themselves as if you've met before. Some you vaguely recognize. One, a sleepy raccoon in a waistcoat, insists you once traded him a sigh for a jar of thunder. You nod politely. In the center of the orchard stands a peculiar tree, its trunk spiraled like a unicorn's horn, its leaves humming faint lullabies. It's called the Agreement Tree, and once a season, it offers one riddle to each neighbor. Fail the riddle, and you owe it a secret. Today, it chooses you. Its voice creaks like a wooden swing on a still day. What grows backward when watched hides behind ears and never enters the room the same way twice? You blink. Gregor whispers, "Don't say anxieties. I tried that once. It wanted to keep me." You think, gently, sleepily. Memory, you murmur. The tree rustles with quiet approval. A golden leaf floats down into your hand. It warms your palm, then dissolves into sparkles. You may stay, the tree whispers. The neighbors cheer mildly. Madame Tithonia clinks your teacup. Now you are woven. A celebration begins. It's the sort of party where conversations drift like clouds and no one finishes a sentence but everyone feels heard. Sir Bramblefork shares a toast in ancient sonnet form. The raccoon makes a pie entirely from forgotten flavors. One neighbor reads a love letter to a mailbox. Gregor wins the raffle and is awarded a map of hypothetical shortcuts through emotional turmoil. As evening presses its soft cheek against the orchard, lanterns blink on. Glow bugs in tiny glass houses suspended from the trees. They pulse gently, as if breathing. You and Embernard walk home slowly. Did we join something today? You ask. Yes, he says, and it joined you back. A breeze curls around your ankles. Some say the neighbors in the orchard aren't truly people, but fragments of a single great dream, shattered long ago when the moon first learned how to keep secrets. Others say they just like potlucks. Either way, as you cross back through the arch, you feel slightly more real. Or maybe slightly more dream. Back at the cottage, you find that your quilt has rearranged itself again. This time, the pattern shows your day at the orchard, already embroidered in soft blues and sleepy golds. Gregor nestles in beside you, holding his prize map like it might drift away. As your eyes close, you think of the tree's riddle again. And for a moment, you swear you feel memory. Brushing past, behind your ear, whispering something only the dreaming part of you can hear. You wake to the sound of humming, not quite music, not quite language, but something in between. The cottage smells like moss and cinnamon and slightly toasted hopes. Your pillow has left a faint imprint of a spiral on your cheek, as if you've been marked by sleep itself. Gregor is in the hallway, wearing a monocle and a cape fashioned from a handkerchief. Today's the day, he says, quite seriously. You learn the Underworld's favorite game. You follow him downstairs. Embernard is sipping from a teacup labeled Possibly Thursday. He's wearing a robe stitched with little blinking eyes that wink at you lazily. Don't worry, he says, handing you a toasted crumpet. It's only mildly competitive and only metaphorically dangerous. The game is called Grimblehook, though no one can agree if the name refers to the rules, the board, or the inevitable emotional arc of playing. To begin, you must find the field, which isn't a place, exactly, but a mood. The cottage guides you, gently shifting your surroundings until you step out the back door and find yourself standing on a vast plain of velvet fog. A single tree looms at the center, bare except for one sock dangling from a high branch. It waves in a non-committal breeze. All around, creatures are gathering. Neighbors, underfolk, even a couple of poltergeists wearing mittens and sipping thermoses of spectral cocoa. The Grimblehook board is conjured from a carpet and 7 arguing toadstools. The pieces? Pieces of you. A habit you've been meaning to outgrow, a laugh from 3 years ago, a nap you almost took during a thunderstorm. They hover in the air, gleaming gently. Your opponent today is the archivist, a gentle, solemn figure who appears to be made of parchment and paper clips. Her voice rustles when she speaks. Begin, she says, bowing with precise ambiguity. Grimblehook moves in strange circles. You are not trying to win, exactly. Just trying not to unravel too much. Each turn, you must either share a memory, steal a metaphor, or trade a truth for a maybe. You open with a bold maneuver, sacrificing a small regret in exchange for a recurring dream. The archivist counters with a metaphor about tangled shoelaces and unresolved conversations. The crowd hums appreciatively. The game shifts, the board curves inward. Gregor eats a popcorn kernel that has always existed. At one point, Embernard throws you a wild card whim, which lands on its side and becomes a soft breeze that tells you what you almost said to someone once, but didn't. You feel lighter. The score is irrelevant, though someone, a sleepy-looking sphinx, is keeping it anyway, scribbling numbers onto a scroll that eventually turns into a kite and flies away. Halfway through, the sock in the tree falls. That means intermission. You sit with the archivist beneath the tree. She pours you a cup of ink. It tastes like curiosity and forgotten pencils. Why play this game? You ask her. She smiles. Her teeth are paperclips arranged in a crescent. To remember what you're not holding, she says, and to hold it anyway, for a moment. You nod. The second half of Grimblehook is quieter. Each move is more of a whisper than a decision. At the end, the board folds itself into a napkin. The pieces hum, then vanish into the mist. You and the archivist shake hands. Her palm is cool and rustling. You did well. she says. You left behind just the right amount. Back at the cottage, Embernard brews a tea called Victory. Low stakes. Gregor is wearing a tiny crown made of mint leaves. I appointed myself the game's honorary diplomat, he explains. I now represent interdimensional leisure. You spend the evening quietly. You mend a button on a coat that hasn't been worn yet. Embernard sketches a map to a place that might exist if it's in the right mood. Gregor writes a letter to someone he's never met and tucks it into the fireplace, which belches fondly and eats it. Before bed, you check the mirror. Your reflection smiles at you, warm and slightly misaligned. It looks like someone who remembers things they never lived. Some say Grimblehook is just a ritual designed by Underworld librarians to shuffle the pages of your spirit. Others insist it's a story and that every time it's played, it gets closer to its ending. And some say it's simply a way to feel less alone for an afternoon. That night, you dream of the sock tree. In the dream, it has grown taller, and there are now 2 socks, yours among them, fluttering in a breeze that hums a lullaby you've never heard, but somehow remember. The next morning, the cottage feels quieter than usual, like it's holding its breath, waiting to see what sort of day you'll choose. You open the window and inhale a breeze so gentle it might be shy. It smells faintly of charcoal sketches and soft piano notes. Today, there's no note on the window glass, just a smudge shaped like a question mark, as if the world itself isn't sure what's next. Gregor is sitting on a book, not reading it, sitting on it like a hen brooding over metaphors. Your cottage wants to float today, he says without looking up. Embernard appears behind him, holding a spoon that seems to be stirring itself. A good sign. It means your presence here is starting to loosen gravity's grip. You'll want to visit the souvenir pond, he adds. It only surfaces when the cottage drifts. And sure enough, when you step outside, the cottage is untethered. The path behind it is gone, or maybe folded. The air has that strange stillness of a snowfall that hasn't decided to fall yet. You walk until the trees begin to shimmer, their trunks lined with sentences. Some readable, some only half finished. Gregor trots beside you, occasionally licking dew off of punctuation marks. Eventually, you reach the souvenir pond. It's not especially large, more like a puddle that took itself seriously and became reflective. The surface doesn't show your face. It shows what the world remembers about you. Today, the water reflects you laughing at something you haven't experienced yet. You look peaceful and a little confused. Floating on the surface are dozens of tiny boats, each one folded from a moment. You pick one up. It's made of parchment and smells like late afternoon. Written on its side in curling ink. The time you almost said no, but didn't. Another drifts by. The breeze that first learned your name. Each souvenir is an echo, a memory you didn't know belonged to you, or perhaps didn't realize could be claimed. Embernard kneels by the water. Choose one, he says, but know it will linger. You hesitate, then reach out and take the one shaped like a tiny violin case. As soon as your fingers touch it, the world stutters. Not in a jarring way, more like a dream flipping to its next page. Suddenly, you're somewhere else. You stand on a stone bridge suspended over stars, where the river beneath flows not with water, but with whispered goodbyes. Beside you is a woman dressed in twilight. She plays a violin with no strings. The sound is beautiful, delicate and echoing, like a song that forgets its own ending. This was your almost regret, she says, but you let it go before it could name itself. You sit beside her for a while, not speaking, just listening. When you return, the pond is still. Gregor is napping on a lily pad, his tail twitching in a rhythm only he understands. You sit by the shore and watch the souvenir boats drift slowly into the mist. Some say the pond shows not souvenirs but simulations, things that could have mattered if only you'd given them more time. Others believe it's the Underworld's way of offering closure, one gentle ripple at a time. As the sky darkens, though not in a threatening way, you head back. The path isn't quite the same. The trees seem to blink slowly as you pass. The moss hums in the key of memory. Back at the cottage, the door creaks open by itself, like an old friend sighing in relief. You find a new mug in the cupboard. It says, "I visited the souvenir pond, and all I got was a recontextualized understanding of self." Gregor shrugs. "I got socks." Embernard pours you a hot drink brewed from storyberries and moonroot. You sip, and it tastes like something you once forgot to remember. In your room, the quilt now shows boats, dozens of them, embroidered in quiet colors. One has your name, another just says, almost. You lie down. Outside, the cottage creaks happily as it settles again into the earth, or maybe not quite the earth, but a place shaped like it. Sleep takes its time arriving tonight, but when it does, it brings a lullaby from the violin with no strings and a whisper. You are more than your souvenirs. Morning arrives in soft focus, as if the sky has drawn sheer curtains over the sun. You stretch, not quite sure if you're waking up from a dream or into one. The quilt is unusually cool today, woven with tiny stitched waves that shimmer when touched. Your fingers trail over the fabric, and for a moment, you hear gulls. Or maybe soft, sleepy dragons. Downstairs, Embernard is watering the fireplace. It hisses in approval and grows a little fern. Today, he says, handing you a cup of fog, is market day. Gregor, who has tied a bell to his tail and is jingling like a distracted sleigh, beams. The midnight market's drifted close. It only moors near this part of the underworld every 7 or so dreams. You dress accordingly. Your coat insists on wearing itself inside out for better enchantment absorption. Your boots request a polish made from stardust and quiet affirmations. The market isn't in a town. It is a town, temporarily. A sprawl of stalls, tents, floating platforms, and occasionally argumentative doorways, hovering in a glade that smells of spice bread and mischief. You arrive just as a group of gorgons finishes assembling a stand that sells hairbrushes for snakes. The vendors don't shout. Instead, they hum their wares, each melody an invitation. A sylph in a shawl of drifting paper offers regrets, gently folded. A sleepy kraken in suspenders displays bottled thunder, neatly labeled by emotional tone, wistful, rebellious, apologetic. Gregor drags you to his favorite stall, a tiny table where a frog sells spoons that remember the last dish they served. One sniffs at you and mutters, "Pine nut risotto, plus existential doubt." "I'll take it," Gregor declares. Your eye is caught by a tent stitched entirely from dreams that never took root. Inside, soft music plays without source. The walls shimmer with flickering images, ideas half-born, worlds left unwritten, songs unsung. A gentle creature greets you, a librarian of lost potentials. "Feel free to browse," she murmurs. "Nothing here bites. Much." You pick up a vial labeled "What You Almost Became." Inside is a tiny scene. You, in different clothes, speaking a language you don't know, sitting under a sky shaped like a question mark. It makes you feel quietly full, as if just seeing it brings you closer to the parts of yourself that might still bloom. You purchase it with a sigh and a button shaped like a spiral. Outside, Embernard is haggling over a teacup that predicts compliments. You explore further, a mirror that shows only the people who miss you, a notebook that writes in your handwriting, but only when you're asleep, candies that taste like feelings you can't describe. You try one labeled "The Hush Just Before Snowfall." It melts like a lullaby. At the far end of the market is a peculiar stall. Blank, quiet, barely there. No signs, just a velvet table and a creature with a cloak of old stars. The creature gestures to you, then lifts a cloth. Underneath is a single object, a key, but not to anything ordinary. The label reads, "To the room you've never entered but already live in." Gregor gasps. That's rare. The key is warm in your hand. You don't buy it. It disappears the moment you touch it, and you suddenly feel as though a door somewhere in your life just unlocked. You look around, dazed. The market is shifting, some stalls beginning to shimmer, others floating upward, carried by breezes shaped like whispers. "Time to go," Embernard says gently, handing you a pouch that wriggles slightly. "You bought 3 riddles and a memory. They'll keep." Back at the cottage, you unpack your spoils, a spoon that sighs when bored, a dream wrapped in tissue paper, a feeling that might be hope, but could also be excellent soup. Gregor curls up in the new teacup. Embernard hums a lullaby in reverse. Outside, the last of the market sails away, carried by moonlight and unmet glances. Some say the midnight market is older than stories, and that once you buy something from it, a version of you continues shopping forever in another world. Others say it's just a clever excuse to try emotional pastries. Either way, as you fall asleep, you clutch the tiny vial. Inside, your other self still sits beneath that sky, still waiting, still you, and now, somehow, closer. The day begins not with light, but with a sound, a soft chime like wind brushing over glass, or a memory trying to get your attention. You open your eyes and the room seems larger than before. Or perhaps you're smaller. The furniture hums quietly, like it's having a polite conversation without you. Gregor is already awake, doing synchronized stretches with a book of forgotten dance steps. "There's a letter for you," he says, balanced on one paw. You find it on the windowsill, tucked inside a walnut shell. The ink is silvery and faintly warm to the touch. It simply reads, "It's time." Embernard appears with a calm expression and a satchel shaped like a question mark. "The cottage believes you're ready," he says, adjusting his scarf. "It wants to show you the upstairs." You blink. "There's an upstairs?" He nods. "Only when someone deserves it, or accidentally knocks on the ceiling with their dreams." Gregor clears his throat. "You did both. Simultaneously, in your sleep. Quite impressive." The staircase wasn't there yesterday. But now, in the hallway behind the kitchen, a spiral set of steps ascends into what seems to be a cloud woven from moon thread and old lullabies. You climb. With each step, the world softens. You pass a landing filled with jars, each labeled with the name of a feeling you've had exactly once. Then another level, with portraits of you at different ages, including some you haven't reached yet. At the top, a door. It opens without sound. And inside, a room made of memory, not just yours, everyone's. Walls built from shared glances, quiet kindnesses, stories told twice just for comfort. The ceiling is painted with stars you've never seen, yet somehow recognize. A desk sits in the middle. On it, a book. It has your name on the cover. You open it. There are stories inside. Some you've lived, some you've only dreamed of, and some that seem to come from a version of you that still exists just out of reach. The pages are handwritten, but the ink changes colors with your breath. Embernard places a hand on your shoulder. "This is your archive." Gregor jumps onto the desk. "You're officially a resident now, not a visitor." You exhale slowly. You didn't realize you'd been waiting for that sentence your whole life. The room shifts gently, becoming more comfortable the longer you stay. A teacup appears beside you. The tea smells like a hug you didn't know you needed. A whisper of wind passes through the room, and a voice, your voice, but older, slower, says, "You can rest here now." You close the book, not finished, but paused. Embernard nods as if approving your choice. Gregor curls up on a pillow that didn't exist a moment ago. You sit in a chair that fits perfectly, and for once, your thoughts don't scramble to the edges. They just settle. Some say the upstairs room is a myth, a metaphor for inner peace wrapped in whimsical wallpaper. Others believe it only appears to those who've wandered long enough to forget what they were seeking and found something better. Outside, the stars blink slowly, like eyes growing sleepy. The cottage creaks with satisfaction. It feels proud of you. You breathe in. The air smells like old paper and future adventures. You breathe out, and the world listens. The chair beneath you rocks ever so slightly, like a boat on the gentlest current. The air in the room is still, but not stagnant. It feels like a pause between thoughts, a hush between heartbeats. The book remains on the desk, its cover warm, its pages now closed. Not in finality, but in contentment. The stars above the ceiling twinkle slower, as if they too are drifting off. Gregor is curled in a perfect spiral, his whiskers twitching in a dream. Embernard sits nearby, not watching you, but keeping watch. A presence that needs no attention, only permission to remain. The house itself seems to breathe. Floorboards settle. The quilt upstairs sighs with sleep. The teacup cools beside you, and somewhere far below, the river of goodbyes flows on in silence. You think of all the strange things you've seen, the games with meanings you can't quite name, the creatures that never asked you to understand them, only to sit beside them and listen. You remember the sock in the tree, the boat in the pond, the laughter in the mist. And in this room, this quiet final chamber, the world gently folds in around you, like pages closing after the last line of a bedtime tale. There are no more errands, no more riddles, just stillness and breath, and the slow, certain knowledge that you are home, even here in a place made from myth and moonlight, even now, in the soft hush between sleep and story. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let the world outside melt away, one slow blink at a time. You've made it. You can rest now.